Hello, everybody, and welcome to StarNet Link. And today I thought we'll go ahead and do space lesson number 12, which is going to be about the crystal grid network, also known as a neural network link across this planet. And I thought I will go ahead to start talking about this because it correlates to my last previous videos about the alpha and the omega system. And it's very extremely important for people to know about the crystal grid network and especially know how it connects to this planet and the reason why it's very important, but also how it connects to humanity and its current state of form right now. So, the crystal grid network predates human history, predates humans, well, predates human history. And even the development of humans on this planet. It was the Crystal Grid Network was built around this planet right after or a couple of million years after Earth's construction or birth, as it's called. Um, the reason why some people talk about Earth being built is because they interlace the planet with crystals or a crystal grid network. And that's the reason why they refer to Earth being actually literally built, because they interwoven within the construction or the development of this planet with the crystal grid network as well as a crystal core network. If they didn't add the crystal core network and the crystal grid network, Earth would not be as habitable as it is now. It would look completely different than it does today. And they did that in order to make Earth more habitable, but also a little bit more stable. Um, Even before the construction of Earth, the solar system had other planets in the solar system, and they got into conflict with each other and destroyed each other. And that's the reason why we have the two asteroid belts in our solar system, because those asteroids used to be planets and they got destroyed during the construction of this entire solar system. So, to order to match the construction or the development of this solar system, they needed to create another planet that could house life, which was Earth and Mars, and a couple of the other moons in the solar system to order to house life of different kinds. But they felt bad that the planets that got destroyed wasn't able to develop natural living beings that could naturally evolve. So that's the reason why Earth was the backup. And that's the reason why when they say Earth was built or created is because they're talking about how they inserted a crystal core crystal as well as the crystal grid network of this planet. The crystal grid network was specifically built a couple of million years after Earth was completely developed. What I mean by developed, meaning that there was no volcanic activity. Like when you hear these stories of them, how Earth was being built, they'll talk about that in the early days there was a lot of volcanic energy. A lot like Earth wasn't inhabitable, but it took a couple of million years for Earth to finally start to develop some form of life on this planet or planetation or vegetation, and that's what they're talking about. And that's when they started creating the crystal grid to order the balance out, because they started to see that the interdimensional energy of this planet was affecting the plant life, was affecting the ecosystem of this planet, as well as the water of this planet. So, in addition to that, that's the reason why the crystal grid network was created. Because of this crystal grid network, it allowed other interdimensional and other animals to develop naturally, as well as the human race. The human race is another completely story, which I will probably have to go into, but we're mostly mainly focusing on the crystal grid network right now. And as a result, the reason why it was created was to balance and distribute the energy, or the energy ley lines, or the energy flowing through the planet, to be more equally distributed, because they were really afraid that the energy of where the planet was situated, and the interdimensional energy where it was situated, that it would destroy this planet, and that's what they didn't want. So they created the crystal grid network to balance and even out, but also to create more stable life or ecosystem for the life on this planet. So the crystal grid network is a biomechanical thing. If you want to call it living, yes, but it is biomechanical, meaning that the crystal is interwoven or interlaced with this planet. And due to the fact that some people believe that the planet is alive, is a sentient being, has a name, has a heartbeat that some people might hear or talk about as the Schumann resonance. Um, but yes, the Schumann resonance, Earth does have a heartbeat. And because of that, this planet, like the crystal grid is like her, I wouldn't say her armor, but I would say like, imagine Ishtar as a human, and she's wearing a beautiful lace interwoven beaded dress that is extremely beautiful, and that's basically what the grid system is her dress, or her crown, as he wants to call it, if you want to put it in the terms of a human being. But the crystal grid network is interwoven or interlaced with Earth, meaning that it's biomechanical. And it's biomechanical for a specific reason, because it can self-heal itself sometimes, or it can expand or change the dynamics of the energy field of this planet to make it more balanced. So I thought I would go ahead and share a little presentation to order to get like a general sense of like what it looks like and how it's like layered over the planet. So this is the crystal grid network. This is the closest picture that I could find online. Just ignore the writing on the sides, but just this picture of them overlacing the grid network, or the crystal grid network. This is the closest representation of what I could find about the crystal grid network online. The crystal grid network used to look extremely different than it does now. So during the early days, back when Pangea was still around, the crystal grid network only covered the land masses of the planets, only in the land masses, not the water. But they had to come back into Earth again, and this was during Lemuria and Atlantis. So the grid network was just over the land, but then they had a major issue with Atlantis and Lemuria. This is just like a rough sketch. This is not actually accurate, but I just thought I would use it as a reference. But the crystal grid network was only interlaced over the main land masses of the planet. And then there was an issue going on with Atlantis and Lemuria, and they sank to the ocean floor. And then because of that, some of the crystal grid network went down into the Earth's, or the water, or the ocean network, into the ocean. And that's when the crystal grid started to realize that, or a lot of the ancient builders realized that they can't just have a crystal grid network just over land. They have to have it encompassing the entire planet, as well as the water systems of this planet, because they find out later that the water is like absorbing energy. They find out that water is completely absorbing the energy like a sponge, like a huge gigantic sponge. And they were starting to see that it was causing a lot of issues in the water. So that's the reason why they created not only the crystal grid network over land, but they also started to create it and started to grow its own network in the sea over time. Today, this is what the current map of the world map looks like. And as such, I think a lot of people need to understand that when the crystal grid network, part of it sunk into the ocean with Atlantis and Lemuria, they had to build another stable area or a stable place to create the crystal grid network, because with this shift of continents shifting because of continents drift and creating new expansions over land was weakening or stressing out the system, so they had to recreate it or rebuild it again. And so they expanded it down to the poles. So how they rebuild it or re-expanded it is that the crystal grid network main points is at the poles, which is the North and South Pole, but they mainly made it down in Antarctica as the main point surface for like the main generator for the crystal grid network. And then they distribute the different points. And some of them you guys might remember, anywhere there is a pyramid, especially the pyramids in Giza, but some of the pyramids in China and India and Africa, South America, Mexico, the United States, um, it's there to distribute energy. And those pyramids are specifically placed there to order to help generate energy for some of the stargates in the area, but also as a way to distribute energy through the stargates and distribute energy off the planet to keep it nice and leveled and straighten it out so it doesn't pool in certain areas and cause problem. And what I was talking about in my previous video is about the Omega system. The Omega system destroyed vast majority of the crystal grid network to the point where it's having a very difficult time to regrow itself. Now the Omega system had a very difficult time destroying um, the crystal grid network over land because that is the most strongest. And because most of the crystal grid networks or the main focal points of the crystal grid were in very, very, I guess, highly popular or highly dense areas of the population where they couldn't do a whole lot of damage, but they could disrupt the energies in that way and and causing animals and the wildlife to act very strangely in those areas, but they couldn't do that much damage. But the most reputable damage that they have done to the crystal network is the water grids or the crystal grid that goes into the waterways. And this is the reason why fish are acting really strange, the reason why they're breaching themselves, the reason why aquatic life is acting so strangely in the water is because the Omega system basically destroyed vast majority of the crystal grid, which is affecting the ecosystem of the oceans. You will start to notice that a lot of the coral reefs are dying. They're not dying because of the chemicals. Yes, that's another factor. But the major factor is that the crystal grid network was literally channeling energy to these corals to create life and energy, and it was really helping the sea creatures to navigate and to communicate with each other. because of how it was laid out. And they were also the main protectors of the water gates across this planet. This is the reason why Bermuda Triangle was created, or certain areas where there's a lot of mysterious stories about shipwrecks and stuff, is because the Omega system was literally destroying the gate system. This is the reason why the aquatic life um, is being damaged, or the water is so tainted or doing so poorly on this planet. Yes, most of it is human nature, but some of it was actually done on purpose by the Omega system. You have to understand that we are a semi-aquatic life form, even though that we are a mammal race and reptilian, but we are also semi-aquatic race. And this is because that we, as a race, as a human, and it mostly depends on humans, but according to the national database of government websites, that humans cannot go more than 3 days without water. Some people in certain areas cannot go a day without water. And sometimes they're very even lucky if they even get a chance to access water. So water is a very important resource. And that's the reason why they were attacking it so much. And one of the things that you have to understand about the crystal grid network that I don't think a lot of people understand, but due to the fact that the human race is a natural born species, and even though that it was engineered to speed up the evolutionary process of the human race, um, we are considered a natural born race on this planet. Because they allowed for some period of time, which is like millions of years, to naturally evolve, and then they started coming in and re-engineering us. Um, because of that, the Anunnaki was unable to get rid of the crystal, crystal, crystal that is implanted in us. What I mean by implanted, meaning that it's given to us at birth. Um, and a lot of people call this the pineal gland, but I do know that there has been cases where they have found crystals in people's brains, or crystals in the back of people's necks. And when we talk about the triple helix, this is where the crystal grid comes in, because we're not only talking about the triple helix, about connecting to the other half of yourself in the metaphysical. So when they talk about the triple helix, they're talking about the mind, body, and spirit when they talk about the triple helix. And so when they talk about the body, they actually mean the body that you're born into, and the mind that they're talking about is the crystal grid network. The crystal grid network, or the neural network system, is the consciousness and also the human consciousness of the entire planet. We are interwoven with the consciousness of the planet, and we are on, also the crystal grid network in some parts is actually the human consciousness, or the main collective consciousness of the human race. And when you know this, you can understand the reason why they re-engineered us, because they were really afraid that we would become a symbiotic race to Earth if we're not already. And due to the fact that the Omega system was destroyed, we might convert back to becoming a symbiotic race to this planet, meaning that we can have a direct tie to this planet on a energetic as well as a actual connection. So if anybody has watched the Avatar movies, you will know what I'm talking about, and that is a direct representation of what a symbiotic relationship is with a planet. And they tried to re-engineer us so that we wouldn't be able to do that to our own planet. But due to the fact that things have been changing so rapidly with the human race, um, it doesn't surprise me that we might convert back into becoming a symbiotic or a symbiote planet race. And people need to understand that the neural network is a direct tie to human consciousness. And because they have destroyed, or the Omega system destroyed, vast majority of parts of the crystal grid network, this might explain the reason why so many humans are having mental health issues, is because when you destroy a vast majority of the human consciousness or the planet's consciousness, and we might have a direct tie to it, you can understand how much reputable damage that can cause to an entire population as well as the health and ecosystem of this planet. So Marduk and the previous people really fucked up when they started messing around with the crystal grid network. And because of that, that when they said that you can't go over the threshold of 70%, meaning that they couldn't go over 70% damaged of the human crystal grid network. And if they did, it would literally destroy this planet. And what I mean by destroy this planet, I mean like literally destroying every fundamental aspect of this planet, including inner Earth. And inner Earth was really pissed off. And it's like, well, inner Earth, you have a chance to step up to the plate and kick the Anunnaki and the Draconians off this planet. If you really love this planet, and I understand that there's interplanetary laws that you have to follow, but they're basically destroying this planet from the core to the outside or inside out, basically. And so this might explain the reason why some people are having really, really bad mental health, is because they might have a more stronger tie to the planetary grid system. And that's really important because people who are empaths are people who have very direct connection to this planet are often people that are supposed to help maintain the grid, and they know where the heavy hit areas are on the grid and they know how to fix them. So the question becomes mean is, how do we go about fixing the grid system? The areas that need to be fixed are not on land, they're on water. So if you're near a beach, if you're near the ocean, um, use your energy work to channel all the energy or all the healing vibrations to the oceans, specifically the coral reefs, and just heal the planet. That's the fundamental way that you can start healing the planet very, very quickly and very rapidly, by focusing and channeling all your energy and all your light work to the oceans. Because the grid system on land is totally fine. It's the water that is having the major issues, and that is what is counter reacting against the crystal grid network on land. So people who do a lot of energy work, who implant crystals, if you can find a way to implant these crystals in water, like in lakes or in the ocean or at beaches where people won't get to them, but in places where the water fundamentally is near the ocean, those are the areas that need to be worked on the most. Is definitely our water. Our waterways needs it the most. And with that being said, that if you channel all your healing energy and all your light work to the oceans, it can fundamentally start rapidly healing this planet very quickly. And the other thing is for people who want to really help do land work, um, one of the ways that would really, really help and benefit the planets is by going to areas that have been plagued with war, like land that has been plagued with war, or on areas that have uncovered mass graves, or abandoned areas like abandoned houses and abandoned buildings, those areas absorb a lot of energy. And if you go in those areas and just start cleansing those areas, yeah, a lot of ghost hunters are going to get ticked at you for doing it because you're getting rid of their entertainment or you're getting rid of, but you're fundamentally doing the work that could rapidly heal this planet. And for a very good reason is because um the more of those areas don't get healed, the more energy gets absorbed and it can cause a lot of problems. This is the reason why a lot of people might get energy attacks, is because those abandoned areas are not being sealed or healed properly and they're causing a lot of disturbances. Like if an area is heavily plagued with war or trauma or some sort of thing, that can stick around for thousands and thousands of years if you don't have spiritual workers to go and cleanse those areas. And those are the areas that need to be cleansed the most. And I really hope that what I say might help people who really want to do work on this planet and really want to focus their energy work on this planet. I would tell them to start with the oceans because that is where vast majority of the Omega system was fundamentally destroying the planet, was through the waterways. This might explain the reason why the merfolk might hate their human race, is because they didn't understand how the crystal grid network is laid out or strung out on this planet. And for a lot of people, you need to understand that the crystal grid network isn't just a network system, is a biomechanical network that is interwoven, interlaced with this planet, and is also connected to the human consciousness. So the other fundamental thing to fix the crystal network is through human consciousness network. This is the reason why the Galactic Federation is constantly talking about vibrations, human consciousness, is because we're directly having an effect on it negatively. And this is the reason why a lot of people have a lot of mental health issues, is because due to the fact that the crystal grid is deteriorating, it's also deteriorating the human consciousness as well. And one of the fundamental ways to order the fixed human consciousness is focusing focusing on human consciousness in the astral realm, like fundamentally healing and being kind, being nice, and trying to find ways to unify people and unify groups of people, like unify the entire planet. You don't know how fundamentally important that is to the entire planet because it has a direct tie and a direct tie to this planet, but also has a direct tie to the human race. So as the Omega system was destroying the planet, destroying the crystal grid network, it was also destroying the crystal grid, also destroying human consciousness. And this might also explain why a lot of people do bad behavior or have a lot of behavior problems, is because of the deterioration of the human consciousness that is directly connected to the neural network system. And yes, you fundamentally have the ability to change the crystal grid network and fundamentally change human consciousness by uniting, doing energy work with other people or in groups, because it's fundamentally changing the dynamics of the human consciousness, but also the human brain, and also fundamentally um, the crystal grid network. And fundamentally, due to the fact that we might have a semiotic relationship with the crystal grid network, it will explain the reason why some people have different neural problems or health problems, is because what is directly connected to crystal grid, it's like if the planet is sick, it will directly affect the human race as being sick as well. And that's what another thing that a lot of people need to understand when it comes to a symbiotic relationship. Like, even though that it may not affect everyone, like some people are not directly tied to the planet as other people, but is a conversation that a lot of people need to have if you're an empath, if you're an energy worker or sensitive to energy, because you are more deeply connected to this planet than other people. And that is not something that is a burden, but it actually a truly gift, because you can sense where the difficult areas are. You know where the areas on the planet that need to be healed properly. And fundamentally, us as the human race, we do fundamentally have the ability to change. It's just going to take time for us to change. And we're going through a growth spurt like any other race does. But we fundamentally need to focus on human consciousness, focus on healing the oceans of this planet in order to get it on back on track to the enlightenment or ascension path that everybody is talking about. So I really hope that this answers a whole lot of questions about the crystal network and how it's also connected to the alpha and omega system. But thank you so much for listening and following to my videos. If you want to support me, the donation links is in the YouTube profile, as well as my business contact if you want to contact me for my services or contact me in general. But thank you so much for your support. Hopefully this answers a whole lot of questions. But thank you so much for listening and following my channel.